Welcome back to Movement Professional. So today I want to go over a hip extension rocking position in half kneeling, and I'm going to look at how to progress this. So the rock just is a more dynamic version of a hip extension mobilization, where instead of staying in one position and breathing there, I'm actually going to try to keep my position as far as the posture of head, rib cage, and pelvis, but I'm going to move myself forward into more of a diagonal version of that alignment and then back to a more vertical version of that alignment and see if I can maintain the idea or the position of hip extension. So the easiest way to start that would be, you could just start in a straight half kneeling position. So let me show you this from the left side first. So just in half kneeling, I'll just pad the knee here. I want to think vertical, head over rib cage over pelvis. All right, so most of the time the compensations you see is that there is a anterior orientation, or the pelvis stays a little bit behind the rib cage. So oftentimes it feels like a little bit of a posterior tilt of the pelvis to just get the hip right under the shoulder, and then we just want to be mindful that the head is staying on top of the shoulder. So this would be my vertical orientation. Now I want to try to keep this idea of the hip extension, and hip extension here means that this hip is flat. It's not sunken in or deep. This would be more hip flexion. This is more hip extension. So as I go forward, I'm going to make my line a little bit more diagonal, but I'm trying to keep the same references here. So head, shoulder, hip, and then I still have this flat hip here. That would be me losing hip extension. My back would orient into more extension, or my pelvis would tip down. I would look like I'm doing the same thing, but I've lost this flat hip. So typically you got to keep muscles active on the back of the thigh. So it could be hamstring, it could be butt. I got to keep my abdominals active so I don't lose my position at my trunk. All right, so I just want to be able to rock back and forth through there. This front leg, I could have the shin a little bit more vertical to the ground, or it's fine to have the knee start to travel a little bit past the toes if I want to challenge a little bit of dorsiflexion of the ankle. It depends on what I feel in this front hip. But the idea here is that I'm trying to keep this line and this extension of the hip as I come in and out of it. So that would be the first progression. If I want to make this a little bit harder, I'll go to yoga blocks. Top of the foot goes on the yoga block. Again, I'm trying to find this vertical orientation first. I feel the abdominals here, feel some type of hip extenders. So hamstrings are hip extenders, glute is a hip extender, and the adductor magnus, those are three major hip extenders. So I'll feel inner thigh, butt, hamstring. Can I keep that as I bring this forward? So I can think kick into the blocks a little bit more to get more glute. I can think tuck the pelvis a little bit more, sit bone to the back of the knee to get more hamstring. All right, I can think sort of suck the knee towards the groin to get a little bit more adductor. But I'm just keeping that as I'm rocking back and forth. So this is demonstrating strength, balance, but a maintenance of this hip extension. All right, and I want to see how well I can do this. So you can do this for reps, or you can do it for time. All right, so the next progression then, I'm going to get a bench in here. And top of the foot goes on the bench now. Still patting the knee, so now it's going to be a little bit more tension here, and that's going to want to pull me out of position. So I have to work harder to get my vertical orientation. I got to think sit bone to the back of the knee to find the glute, hamstring, suck up the knee towards the groin to find the inner thigh. Still feel these left abs. Head over rib cage, over pelvis. I'm going to bring that forward, trying to keep that orientation. Still feel these muscles rock back and forth. Can adjust this foot as needed. Same idea. Okay, and then the last progression, we're going for a more vertical shin orientation. So I'll put this pad right against the pillar here. I'm going to set myself first by just getting that shin to be vertical. If the knee starts coming away from the pillar, might as well just use the bench. So this is sort of an end game here, and you'll find that I have a lot more trouble here. So I like to start this in this more diagonal orientation first. Get that set, feel those muscles activate, and I can only come up to about here right now, but if I rock a little bit, I might be able to get a little bit more vertical as I loosen up. The key here is that I keep engagement in the abdominals, I keep engagement in the hip extenders, and I'm not just getting here by letting the back extend. All right, so there's a rocking motion here, and what I find is really valuable here is as I rock a little bit more, I tend to get a little bit more motion than I did on my first rep. So I can loosen this up with more reps until I get to the point where I'm up here. I still feel the abs, still feel the hip extenders, and then I can actually feel myself getting more mobile with each rep. All right, so depends on how you feel day to day, where you want to start, but you can start just from that half kneeling, knee down, no elevation of the back foot, and then eventually you can get up to a vertical shin. And it's a nice progression to work through, and it could take you months, it could take you years, but it's nice to see some type of progress when we're thinking about mobility. It's not just about seeking out a stretch, it's actually about being able to do something a little bit harder or get into a harder position than you were able to get into, from what your baseline is from when you started. Hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions, you can reach out at movementprofessional.com. I'll see you next time.